Hi everyone, it's your girl Desiree and I'm back with another video. We're going to talk about femininity in the hood. And yeah, the whole Momma Dee Scrappy situation. Obviously, we don't know all the intricate details, so I'm not going to talk too much about them in particular. But I just wanted to talk about the topic at hand, so make sure you stay tuned. So my first point is basically that living in a survival mode environment for a woman is not a safe place for a soft life. Once again, let's start this over again. Yes, so living in a survival mode environment is not safe for a soft life, femininity life. So women who live in that type of environment, obviously they're not all a monolith. Like there's different types of women. But for the most part, if you're living in a hostile, treacherous environment that does not allow women to be damsel in distress and soft and dainty, then how do you expect a woman to carry herself? I know from experience that when I walk in the hood and I'm smiling and I'm just gonna be friendly, it actually attracts the wrong type of men. I've actually had situations when I was younger where it was like men were very I don't know, but it was really aggressive. And when I say aggressive, I don't mean harmful, but it was aggressive in a sense it was whoa, this guy is too close, or he won't leave me alone. So as I got older, I realized that I can't really smile up at these men and be all ha ha ha, because they get the wrong impression. And I know for me it's even more challenging because of how petite I am. So it's just I had to really learn that. And I always was a more quiet, laid back, shy individual, but I realized that doesn't mean that I have to change who I am, but I realized that actually was attracting the wrong type of people. I mean, even when interacting with women, I was having a lot of issues too, because people just think that because you're small and you're quiet and you're to yourself and you're whatever, you can be walked all over. So this is the type of environment I'm saying that is not really safe for a woman to be like oh hi, because it just doesn't work that way. I'm not saying a woman shouldn't be pleasant. I'm not saying that she should walk around being a very horrible, nasty person just because she lives in the hood. But there's a certain hardness that women sometimes develop in order to survive, especially if she's living in a very unsafe type of hood. Every hood is different. There are some hoods out in some environments where it's very, very treacherous, right? And if a woman also has children, she may be even more that way because she's also thinking about the safety of her children. She may also be very hard and maybe not very nurturing towards her children because she's trying to prepare them for the treacherous environment that they're going to go out into. So same thing with their sons, same thing with their daughters. And it's kind of I have to have my daughter learn to be a hustler and go hard and go hard and go hard. Don't worry about emotions and crying and and all this other stuff. You need to get your education. You need to go hard. You need to go hard. You need to go hard. And with the son, it may, depending on the mother, some mothers may be too easy on their sons, but other mothers can be very harsh on their sons as well because they're preparing their sons for that type of treacherous warlike environment. Some of these women are raising their children in warlike environments. So that's something that I wanted to mention. It's a lot of talk about women need to learn how to be feminine, and especially when it's to talk about black women in particular, but they don't talk about the environments that some of these women are being raised in. And then they're raised in it, but they become adults in it, and then they're trying to navigate through that while you're trying to tell them to be dainty and feminine. But how does that work? And when I say dainty, I don't mean being a doormat, but I mean being playful and pleasant and smiling. That's another thing. They say, why you don't smile? Well, once again, like I said, I used to do that a lot, and it was attracting the wrong type of energy. I'm not saying walk around rolling your eyes at people. Now, there have been times that I have to actually have I guess what they consider stank face, because it actually keeps away the wrong type of people. I try not to be like that, but that actually keeps me, away from the stuff, like I said, that I was actually attracting when I was younger. And it's sad because you don't really want to be like that as a woman, even as a man. There are some men that I've seen in the hood, and they have a very, tough exterior. It's almost like they look very mean, or they look almost like they're unsafe. But when you get to know them, they smile, they're actually very friendly, but you would never know it because they have a certain exterior. So that's what I'm saying. People don't talk about the reality of that. And I think that's very important because you're expecting women to be feminine in an environment that's unsafe. Part of femininity is being vulnerable, and you cannot be vulnerable in an unsafe space, right? So that's very important. If these women are not going to be protected in these environments while they're being vulnerable, then it's actually not safe to be vulnerable. That's one thing I've learned. You cannot just be vulnerable just to be vulnerable, and it can be challenging because as a woman you naturally want to be vulnerable sometimes, especially when you grew up going through certain things, but then you be vulnerable in the wrong environments around the wrong people, and you realize it actually caused you more trauma in the end. And some of the people that are doing these things don't mean you any harm, but because they've also gone through their own trauma, or because they just don't understand how trauma works, they don't, or maybe they don't even know you, right? So they say things and they do things that actually are unhealthy for you. So it's very important that you are being vulnerable in the right environment. You can't just be vulnerable any and anywhere just because you're a woman, just because you're supposed to be feminine. This is not how it works. So that's something that's important to understand. So my second point is that it takes time for a woman to really grow and develop herself if she wants to be in more of a soft life, more into her femininity, if she was raised in a survival mode environment. Whether that be in her home, and also outside her home, or if it's one or the other, right? Many times it's both. Even if you're not raised in a household that's like a household like Momma Dee talked about, you may be raised in even in a religious home like I was. But even though I was raised in a religious home, it was still a survival mode type of household. And there were still things that were in there that was very dysfunctional because of that. There was love there, and you know that you're loved as a child and you're growing up, but you know that there are things that are not, even if you can't put your finger on it, because I was a very self-aware type of child, so I always knew that things were off, not just with where we live, but it was also things within the home. But I love my family, I still do, and I miss those who have passed on. But it's just one of those things where it's like there's a lot of healing sometimes that has to be done. It's a lot of growth that has to be done because of the way that you were raised, and the things that you witnessed. Not just things that were happening to you, or maybe things that you were being neglected in certain ways, but also the things that you've seen people around you go through, and the trauma of that, because you can go through trauma also by what you're witnessing. And then on top of that, you're living in a hood, and you're seeing things outside your home as well. And it's not like that's the only thing. You're going to school, you're going to other places, life still goes on. So there's a lot of different challenges that happen with that. And yeah, so I think it's important to make sure that we're not being disingenuous, and we're having balance in the conversation. We're not expecting women we're not making excuses, but we're also not being disingenuous where we're like, oh, just be feminine, just do this. They just don't want to be feminine, as if it's just that simple. Especially when a woman is raising her child to grow up in that type of hostile environment, and she's doing what she can, not only for her child to be able to eat and to have a place to sleep and to be okay, but also so that child can be able to defend themselves and survive in that type of environment. So and that's naturally what parents do. They do their best to make sure their kids can survive in this world, and sometimes the way they go about it is very unhealthy, because that's how they were raised and that's the environment that they're in, right? I'm not making excuses, but one thing I will say is that parents need to also acknowledge that and say, yeah, I did the best that I could, but also still apologize, and also still acknowledge that they were not the best parent that they needed to be for that child, and also get the help that they need to become better, because it's not too late. Yeah, it may be too late for the upbringing that the child needed, but you're still a parent even when that child's an adult. Now they're not a child anymore, but they still need you. So it's still important to receive that help, and even not even just as a parent, but just as an individual. It's going to benefit you to go get that help and do what you need to do to heal and become better, as in this case, as a mother, right? So I think that's important. And the last thing I'm going to say, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what I just talked about, but the last thing I'm going to say is that, like, some women, they have this mentality, I did the best that I could. Same thing how some men say, I put food on the table, I provided, bills were always paid, everybody was always safe, and that's great. And I think that's great because there are women who grew up in environments where their fathers were not good providers. They were not even there, or they were in and out, or he was unsafe in so many different ways where they weren't even able to depend on their father that he was going to protect them. In some cases, they have to be protected from their fathers, right? So that's great that you were that way, but there may have been so many other ways that you were toxic as a father. Maybe the way that you talk to your children, maybe the way that you kind of brushed them off and didn't want to talk to them, maybe the nasty things that you may have said to them, maybe not intentionally, but because of the way you were raised or the things that you're going through. Or maybe, you never told your children I love you, or made your daughter feel special, feel like, oh, my daddy loves me, you just don't have these type of relationships with your kids. So I think it's just very important for us to understand that a lot of times parents do the best that they can, and I think that there still should be some thank you for that. And that's what Scrappy did do. He said thank you, and I'm glad that he did that, because some children are literally deserted and they have nothing. But the problem is, that doesn't mean that's an excuse to say, well, I did the best that I could, so it is what it is. No, it's still, I'm sorry that I was not able to meet your emotional needs. I'm sorry that I was not able to allow you to feel like you could be vulnerable with your mother. That's very hard for me to hear that, because I would want you to feel like you could come to me as your mother and be vulnerable with me, not just as my son when you were growing up, but also in your adulthood. The fact that you can't be able to do that is very challenging. The fact that has affected your dating experiences with women, or maybe you being a father, this is very challenging for me to hear that, but I need to acknowledge that, because that is a major thing that I played a role in, and I have to take responsibility for that. And a part of that is also maybe me going to therapy and doing what I need to do as a mother, so that I could become a better mother, because my mothering doesn't stop now that you're a man. Yeah, I'm not supposed to mother you like you're a child, but I still want to make sure that I'm a mother that you can still come to even in your adulthood now. And maybe also me acknowledging that and apologizing, and also making the changes to work on myself as a woman, hopefully can help heal some of those wounds from the past. It may not be able to fully help it, and that's something that a man has to go through on his own, also his own healing. But there's also healing in your parents acknowledging their faults, and there's also healing and seeing your parent grow and do the work. And sometimes the parent is not going to want to do it. We have to say, you know what, forget it. I said what I need to say. I told you what I need to tell you. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have to heal regardless. I'm going to have to get closure regardless, so that's that. And that's like a message in of itself, because some of us have had experiences where our parents were not what we needed them to be, and sometimes we do need to have that conversation with them and say, hey, this is how I feel. And sometimes we hold on to that and we don't talk about it, because we're like, oh, I'm an adult now, so I just won't bring that up, that's the past. But if it's really bothering you and it's caused you a lot of trauma, sometimes you have to talk about it, and sometimes it's hard to bring up those type of topics, but I think it's just very important. It's important for sometimes for that to occur, but it also takes the parent also being able to acknowledge and also do the work, and some parents don't want to do that. So that's what I say, sometimes you just have to say, I said my piece, I still need to say, I still love you and everything, but I'm going to have to deal with you a little differently now, because I see that you're not willing to acknowledge and do the work, and I have to do the work on myself. So I still love you. You may not have to cut your parent off. If they're not that toxic, there's no reason to cut them off. I'm the type of person, I'm not going to cut somebody off just because I feel some type of way. I will cut somebody off if they're just that toxic, or maybe it's a mutual understanding where we both don't want to deal with each other anymore. But outside of that, I will still have you there, but maybe my experiences with you will just change, because I understand that you're not able to give me what it is that I need in certain aspects. So I have to now change my expectations of that. Otherwise, I will continuously get myself hurt, hoping and wishing that just one day you'll come around and you'll do XYZ for me in a way that I need you to be. Well, that's not who you are. So I cannot try to change you to be who I want you to be. I have to accept that this is who you are. I still love you, and I hope that you find healing, and I hope that you grow, and I'm going to do the work for myself the best I can, so I can grow and become a better person. Right? So take care, and that's basically all I wanted to say about this topic, and I hope that this was beneficial and it brought some balance to the conversation. Talk to y'all again soon. Bye.